All right, good evening, everyone. This is the public hearing on proposed changes to the Rhinebeck Central School District Code of Conduct. Our regular meeting agenda will follow. Today is Tuesday, July 11th.
Okay, so for the board members, it's item 6.2 in your packets, just in case you want to reference the document. It's a long document, and this year around, not very many changes. So that's the good news, I guess. They're mostly minor changes. At our meeting last time, we had a discussion about a change. All these changes were proposed by the ad hoc Code of Conduct Committee, who met back in early June. And I'm trying to find that reference here. It was on, I think, page 10. And we had a question about removing item number 10 under, I'm sorry, page 18, my mistake. Number 41 on that page, the recommendation was to remove item 10 under 41 on that page, and we got into a discussion about removing teachers removing students from class. There's also a longer section that references that on page 20. And there was a recommendation made from one of the board members to replace removal with the word suspension. So after as I explained in my memo to you, after the meeting, I gave our legal counsel a call and did some of my own research and reflection on that. And in terms of education law, suspension is a very specific word, not to be confused with removal. And in fact, only certified school administrators can suspend a student. A teacher can remove a student, and then if the administrator goes through this long process that's in that part of the Code of Conduct, decides to suspend that student either from that class for a period of time, or perhaps they've done something so heinous that it would suggest suspension for up to 5 days or in excess of 5 days with a superintendent's hearing. That is solely within the purview of the administrator, not the teacher. So based on that, my recommendation is that we do not replace the word removal in teacher removing somebody from their class with the word suspension. That's removal should stay there, and any suspension that happens is something that the administrator can only do. So that's the result of our discussion our last meeting, and that was the only item that we had a discussion about, as I recalled. So my recommendation is for the board to take action on this policy as a second reading this evening, as it was recommended from the ad hoc Code of Conduct Committee. So we can have board level discussion here. There is nobody here unless Rich or Garrett want to make comments on our Code of Conduct. They're more than welcome to. Typically we draw a huge crowd like this for this activity, so it's not particularly surprising, but we're required by commissioners' regulations to provide the opportunity for hearings. So we're doing that. And really, this year's changes are pretty minor. I mean, other years we've had more significant changes. This year, the committee didn't feel that there was much that they felt needed to be changed with the I mean, several years ago, when the Dignity for All Students Act was enacted, we wound up adding a whole section on DASA to this. That was a pretty huge change to this, but this is basically cleaning up language, so, and adding laser pointers. That seems to be, for some kids, the new toy du jour that we want to make sure our code of conduct says, no, you can't be using a laser pointer in class. So anyway, that's where I'm at.
I have a question.
Sure.
Can you just, I'm not sure if our new board members know or the people watching know, who is in this group that reviews the code of conduct?
Yeah, the ad hoc Code of Conduct Committee is, by Commissioner's regulation, supposed to be a stakeholder committee. So there are administrators, we invite administrators, non-instructional staff, teaching staff at the high school level. We have, I think there were 2 students this year on our committee. And parents, yeah, thank you. Usually they're populated from the PTSO, from the building level planning team. Again, they're invited. I think this time around, there were 1 or 2 invitees who said they were going to be there, who, like Kelly Toussaint was one, and at the last minute she couldn't make it, so we met without her. There was a parent there from the high school. So it's supposed to be a stakeholder committee, and it typically is. Most times, we only need to meet once. There have been a few years where we've had to meet 2 or 3 times because either there have been a lot of things that people have brought up, or there have been contentious issues, discussions about whether, and I say this at the hope of not opening a bag of worms, but other years, the issue of whether students should be able to use cell phones in school has come up as an issue, and of course we've dealt with it 3 different ways depending on the building. In the elementary school, they're not allowed to use them, and I think in the middle school they're not allowed to use them by the code of conduct. In the high school, they're allowed to use them in the classroom with the permission of the teacher, or in general areas like cafeteria and whatnot. So it is a K-12 policy, but where certain rules need to be differentiated between elementary or middle school or high school, we may have to put language in there to say at the high school, this is the rule. At the middle school or at the elementary school, it's not permitted at all. So we tried to make it developmentally appropriate for the children in our 3 schools.
And then as a follow-up question,
Sure.
Wasn't last year, or I'm not sure how many years ago it was, that a student group actually came and had questions about the dress
Yes.
provisions?
Yeah, I think it was a couple of years
A couple
ago,
years
if I'm not
now.
mistaken. Yeah, and that's one area that in my time here I've seen the most. That and the technology seem to be the things that come up on a most regular basis, because the technology's changing rapidly, and dress code has always been an issue. And I told the anecdote about one of my, maybe the first or second year, the hot topic was girls wearing spaghetti straps. And it stated that in the code of conduct, girls, I'm not sure if it said girls or females shall not, but one of the prohibited items of clothing was spaghetti straps. And then a couple of years later, a few of the parents on the committee were saying, well, we thought about it. What's wrong with spaghetti strap? And you've heard this before, I'm sure. Anybody who's had kids, you can't even buy clothing like that. They don't sell that stuff in the stores, whether they do or not. That's another discussion. But I think we've migrated, and the students who came to the committee, brought up the idea of gender bias in terms of dress code, and we made some changes to that part of this policy to try as best we were able to not be calling out females and their dress as the problem, and that it's up to our female students not to dress in a provocative way, and it's not, it's the boys' issue that they're being tempted, or use whatever word you want. And to be honest with you, that's how dress codes have been written, and that's how I'm sure some dress codes are still written. And if you spend any amount of time on Facebook, you see these things popping up every now and again about dress code issues. So we've tried to purge that from this policy as much as it's been brought to our attention. So we try to be responsive to those students who brought that forward. It was a good change to make. So that's kind of the long and the short of it for those of you who know the process. And we typically only do this once a year. Many times the issues are brought forward by the building principals, like they're having a problem with a certain behavior that's not addressed in the code of conduct. So they want to make sure the code of conduct very specifically states this is not allowed. A couple of years ago was vaping. I mean, nobody even knew what vaping was 5 years ago, but they were having issues, at the high school with that, and there was nothing in the code of conduct that prohibited that. So they wanted the next iteration of the code of conduct to be very specific with that. Laser pointers made the top 10 this year. So I'm assuming there have been some issues with laser pointers, and they wanted to make sure that our code of conduct spelled that out very specifically. So that's about it.
Is there any other questions or comments about the code of conduct changes? Okay, so we should have a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Is there a second? Okay, all those in favor? All those in favor?
Oh, she's
Is she another fantastic? Yeah.
Sorry, I forgot. All right.
Whitney, you all set? Because don't hesitate to slow us down if you need to.
Slow you down? Oh,
Well, if you
supposed to
need.
start?
Do you have all the names of who voted on that?
No, well, you're first, right?
I
You did like the first.
made the motion.
Made the motion, sorry, and then
I
you did
second.
yes. And then you're not sworn in, so you can, so,
Correct.
there you go.
That's why we have these nifty nameplates.
Oh, yeah.
Good thing, huh?
Okay,
Okay, so I guess Whitney, we're going to turn over to you now.
okay, so I have to just read my little script here.
Yeah, go right ahead.
So the meeting will come to order. We have two new board members, Jacqueline Savaline and Liz, who were elected at the annual meeting held on May 16, 2017. Okay, Ms. Savaline, please stand and take the oath before signing the book.
So she's been sworn in already.
But she said I had to swear her in because
Well,
because she had to start a whole new 3. I don't know.
Oh,
Is
maybe.
that's what?
Oh, yeah, because she was filling out.
You were
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, sorry.
You know what, better to do it than not to do it and have
there you
a
go.
problem
Okay,
with it,
so
so.
here's your,
You get to vote twice.
If that's what Mary Ann said, I'll go along with that.
that's what Marion told me because she said that she was filling in the end. So
No
you would have
problem.
to start a whole new.
Mhm.
Right here.
Did you say I needed to stand or?
Oh, yes, I guess you're supposed to, according to this.
Stand.
Please stand
I
and
didn't
take the
stand
oath
once. So
before
glad
signing
you
the
get to
book.
do this.
Okay.
I, Jacqueline Savolainen, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of trustee according to the best of my ability.
You might just need your sign. Okay, and now with Ms. Fromm, also stand and take the oath.
Okay. I, Elizabeth Brom, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of trustee according to the best of my ability.
Welcome, Jacqueline and Liz, to your 3-year terms of office. I would now ask for nominations for President of the Board of Education for the 2017-2018 school year.
Diane,
I nominate Deirdre Delbert.
second.
Second.
So, I'm sorry.
I nominated Deirdre.
You not, okay. Okay, and then yours,
Laura
I seconded
seconded.
it.
you seconded, okay. And are there any other nominations? No. If so, no, there are none. Okay, is there any discussion?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor of Deidre as president of the board? Okay, that's,
Yeah.
okay, congratulations, Deidre. And now I turn the meeting over to you.
Hand it up.
Okay,
Oh, she's there.
may I call for nominations for vice president of the board?
Mark Fleischer.
And may I have a second?
Second.
To you.
Yes.
Okay. A discussion?
Thank you.
Any other nominations?
All right, I call the question.
Mhm.
All those in favor of the nomination? Voting yourself, I should have voted myself.
Yeah. Good.
Too late.
So do you say this, or do I say this?
I think you're,
Or we just do it?
No, it's
Be enacted. The oath of office?
right, that's, Whitney has to administer the oath to you guys.
Okay.
Okay, this is for the president, so I have to write your name and sign it.
Okay,
Oh,
do I read this
yes.
first?
Yes, thank you.
I, Deirdre Delbert, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duty of President of the Board of Education of the Rhinebeck Central School District according to the best of my ability.
So, thanks, there, and sign. No, I have to do. Okay.
I, Mark Fleischauer, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of Vice President according to the best of my ability.
That was yours. Print and-
Before we continue, but after Whitney takes her seat, I have to have my little cheat sheet from Mary Ann as well. Mary Ann tells me that I need to read into the minutes the fact that either she or Donna administered the oath to you as clerk.
Oh, yes.
And do you know who did that?
Mary Ann did when she came
Mary Ann
over. I
oathed
got
you?
her to do it.
Okay, just let the minutes reflect that you've
Okay.
already been sworn in, okay?
Okay.
All right?
So may I call for nominations for the position of Executive Committee Member for the 2017-2018 school year for the Dutchess County School Boards Association? And I believe you have, yes.
I nominate Mark Fleischer. Please, thank you.
Yes, I may have a second.
Second.
Any discussion? You willing to accept this nomination?
Yes, I am.
Very good. All those in favor of the nomination? Congratulations, Mark.
Thank you.
Now, do I go through each one of these individually?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So, other leadership positions include, we need a motion, may I have a motion to appoint Whitney Drucker? How do you say that?
No, before we get to that, we got to do the committee assignments.
Oh, okay. Where's it?
Right after the
So, am I not
Yeah.
doing this right now? Or is this the
Should
consent?
be at your,
It's at your tables.
your table.
Oh, I'm sorry. making
Okay.
note of that.
Yeah.
We need to do them as
Okay.
I see one,
What's that?
I see one possible mistake.
All right, so what I'd suggest is let's do them all at once, and let's just make sure these are right before
All right.
we,
So we're doing
not the whole
committee
shoot match.
assignments. Are we asking for nominations, or are we simply naming the people?
Well, I think it might, we've already been
We've nominated.
kind of through this, so
Okay.
maybe if somebody would let us know if there's an error or something that needs to be changed on this,
Liz has
we could
4.
change that, then vote
Okay.
the list.
Are there changes?
I'm not on long range.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So Diane Lyons needs to be on long range.
And Liz has 4 committees.
Okay,
This
so,
is too many.
so we'll take Liz off long-range planning and put Diane Lyons on long-range planning. So now Diane has 4.
Yes.
Lucky as you are.
Ad
Okay,
hocs don't count.
that's right, they don't actually.
That's
They
right.
don't-
There are no time.
We always do work.
Don't exist.
Work on ad
Any other changes that we need to make here? This is your chance.
Any other changes?
Was there, did the issue with overlap of facilities and,
Yes.
That got
Yes.
resolved, right?
Liz
Yeah.
from facilities to finance.
okay.
So just look at your own committee assignments, make sure those conform to what you think you've signed up for. Okay.
And as long as we're on that topic, we also at the bottom, down further on that page, we already took care of the Dutch County School Boards Association, but we have several other liaison positions that
Okay,
we should
but
just do the whole shoot and match
Okay,
at once,
so-
I think, just make it easy.
The CDEP liaison, Laura, you're marked as you are willing to continue.
Please.
Rhinebeck Science Foundation, Steve, are you willing to continue? Thompson Mazzarella Park, Mark?
Yes.
Again. Dutchess County School Board Association,
Yes.
and the Rhinebeck Collaboration.
Yes.
Okay, so I think we could have a motion in a second and a vote to
Okay.
approve this whole
May I
slate
have a
of
motion to
people.
approve the committee assignments as amended? Okay, a second.
Second. Nope. We're out of rhythm. Yeah, we really are.
Discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
All right.
Okay, now, which parts of this are consent?
That's the other
Consent.
one. There's no consent on the
Okay, so other leadership positions, we're just gonna go through point by point, right?
Yep.
Okay. So other leadership positions and committee assignments to the Board of Education. May I have a motion to appoint Whitney Drucker as clerk of the Board of Education for the 2017-2018 school year?
So moved.
Second?
Discussion? All those in favor? All in favor. May I have a motion to appoint Christine Natoli as school district treasurer for the 2017-2018 school year with the appointment of Elizabeth Van Kuren as deputy school district treasurer for the 2017-2018 school year?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion to appoint Carolyn Peck as central treasurer for the extra classroom activity fund for the 2017-2018 school year at a stipend of $2,586?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion to appoint Susan McCormick as school tax collector for the 2017-2018 school year at no additional stipend?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? That's unanimous, the motion passes. May I have a motion to appoint Steve Bangert as claims auditor at the rate of $28.61 per hour, or a minimum of $125 per day for the 2017-2018 school year.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor? It's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion to appoint Thomas Burnell, Assistant Superintendent for Support Services, as District Purchasing Agent, and Joseph L. Phelan, Superintendent of Schools, as Deputy Purchasing Agent for the 2017-2018 school year.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion to appoint Marvin Krebs as Title IX, Title VII Coordinator, Title VI Coordinator, and Non-Discrimination Compliant Officer for the 2017-2018 school year.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion to appoint Christine Natoli, District Treasurer, as additional Title IX, Title VII Coordinator, Title VI Coordinator, and Non-Discrimination Complaint Officer on an as-needed basis for the 2017-2018 school year, with compensation for related investigations at her hourly rate.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor? It's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion to appoint Emily Davison, Director of Special Education, as Section 504 ADA Coordinator for the 2017-2018 school year.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor? It's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion to appoint Joseph L. Phelan, Superintendent of Schools, as Designated Education Official for the 2017-2018 school year.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion to appoint Joseph L. Phelan, Superintendent of Schools, as Age Coordinator for the 2017-2018 school year at no extra stipend.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor? It's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion to designate Emily Davison, Director of Special Education, to attend last chance resolution sessions or mediation sessions required by the IDEA, with the authority to execute settlement agreements on behalf of the district, following consultation with the Superintendent of Schools where practicable, and notification to the Board President or Vice President in his or her absence of the contents of any settlement agreement for the 2017-2018 school year.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor? It's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion to approve the additional appointments? Is this, you didn't need to?
We probably should.
Okay. May I have a motion to appoint Teresa Kostakis to the BMS RHS School Nurse and Mary Skeen, the CLS School Nurse, as Attendance Supervisors for the 2017-2018 school year at no additional salary, as included in the duties of school nurse.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor? It's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion to appoint the workplace at Mid-Hudson Regional Hospital to provide school physician services, and Dr. Rajiv Narula as Chief Medical Officer at the cost of $8,376 for the 2017-2018 school year.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor? It's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion to appoint Sheldon Teeter, Director of Facilities, as asbestos designee, Chemical Hygiene Officer pursuant to OSHA, and School Pesticide Representative for the school district for the 2017-2018 school year.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor? It's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion to appoint Christine Belcher, Secretary to the Superintendent, as Records Access Officer, Thomas Burnell, Assistant Superintendent for Support Services, as Records Management Officer, and Joseph L. Phelan, Superintendent of Schools, as Records Appeal Officer for the 2017-2018 school year at no additional salary.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools to designate building principals Edwin Davenport, John Chemnitzer, and Brett King as 2017-2018 Dignity Act coordinators for the respective schools, as required by the Dignity for All Students Act law and by Section 9 of Board of Education Policy 5300 Code of Conduct, to lead and coordinate the efforts of each school's Dignity for All Students Act team in proactively addressing and responding to any and all incidents of bullying, discrimination, hazing, and/or harassment as identified in this state law and board policy.
So moved.
Second?
Those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion to direct Thomas Burnell, Assistant Superintendent for Support Services, to make payments of A, monies for investments, B, interest on bonds as it becomes due. C, payments to redeem bonds as they become due. D, checks to cover payroll and agency account deposits. E, utility bills. F, expense payments to employees. And G, payments under contractual agreements.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion to approve the following designations? A motion to designate M&T Bank, NYLAF, and BNY Mellon as official depositories of funds for the school district for the 2016
Yeah. 17, 18.
school year. Other financial institutions will be brought to the board. The date agreement designated as the
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion to approve the following authorizations? A, motion to authorize Thomas Burnell, Assistant Superintendent for Support Services, and Christine Matoli, District Treasurer, to have access to the safe deposit box maintained by the school district at the M&T Bank for the 2017-2018 school year.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion to authorize petty cash funds at the following locations and in the following amounts for the 2017-2018 school year? Business office, $100. Custodian will be the secretary to the business administrator. Tax collection office, $100. Tax collector. Chancellor Elementary School, $100. Elementary school principal. Bulkley Middle School, $100. Middle school principal. Rhinebeck High School, $100. High school principal. Interscholastic, $50. Athletic director. CLS kitchen, $10. District treasurer. EMS kitchen, $60. District treasurer. RHS kitchen, $100. District treasurer.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion to authorize Joseph L. Phelan, Superintendent of Schools, to approve transfers in budget codes up to $5,000 per transfer for the 2017-2018 school year?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion to authorize Joseph L. Phelan, Superintendent of Schools, and/or Thomas Burnell, Assistant Superintendent for Support Services, as the payroll certification officers for the 2017-18 school year?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion to authorize Joseph L. Phelan, Superintendent of Schools, to approve or disapprove all conference requests for the 2017-2018 school year?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion to authorize Joseph L. Phelan, Superintendent of Schools, to apply for grants in aid for the school district, state, federal, foundation, and private sources for the 2017-2018 school year?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion to delegate the Board of Education's authority pursuant to the Commissioner's Regulation 100.2Y to Joseph L. Phelan, Superintendent of Schools, to have full and final authority to make determination regarding student residency?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion to readopt all previous board policies and the Code of Ethics?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. We have a motion to approve that the meetings of the Board of Education of the Rhinebeck Central School District be held on the dates indicated on the schedule submitted at 7:30 p.m. in the high school, middle school library for the 2017-2018 school year, or in alternate locations and/or times as noted on the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion to adopt the per mile reimbursement rate set by the Internal Revenue Service, which currently is .535 for approval use of personal vehicles on school business, subject to change of the Internal Revenue reimbursement rates?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion to approve the following resolution? Be it resolved that effective July 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2018, the Rhinebeck Central School District will waive the fingerprinting fee of $99 for all new employees who are hired to work less than 20 hours per week or receive a salary of $30,000 or less, except for per diem substitutes. The district will reimburse per diem substitutes for this expense after the completion of 10 days of work and the submission of proof of payment documentation. The district will pay this fee in advance for all others as outlined above.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion to accept the list of New York State's certified impartial hearing officers for Dutchess County for the 2017-2018 school year, as updated by the New York State Education Department in accordance with Section 200.311 of the Commissioner's Regulations for the purpose of conducting special education impartial hearings, with compensation of such impartial hearing officers in accordance with board policy.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion to appoint Shaw, Carlson, May, and Lambert LLP, attorneys at law, as school attorneys for the 2017-2018 school year at a retainer fee of $32,000 and such attorney as assigned as investigator for Title VII, Title IX, and other matters for the 2017-2018 school year if and as needed.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion to approve all persons and positions required by law or regulation to be bonded, e.g. Deputy Treasurer, Central Treasurer Activity Fund, Claims Auditor, Deputy Claims Auditor, Purchasing Agent, in the amount of $100,000 per employee per occurrence, $1 million per occurrence for the tax collector, and $1 million per occurrence for the treasurer for the 2017-2018 school year.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion to approve the following resolution? Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Rhinebeck Central School District hereby appoints Thomas Purnell, Assistant Superintendent for Support Services, as trustee, and Joseph L. Phelan, Superintendent of Schools, as alternate trustee, representing the Rhinebeck Central School District for the Dutchess County Workers' Compensation Cooperative, effective July 1st, 2017, to serve in such capacity until the appointment is rescinded by the board or another individual is appointed in his place.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor? It's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion to approve the following resolution? Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Rhinebeck Central School District hereby appoints Thomas Burnell, Assistant Superintendent for Support Services, as trustee, and Joseph L. Phelan, Superintendent of Schools, as alternate trustee, representing the Rhinebeck Central School District for the Dutchess Educational Health Insurance Consortium, effective July 1st, 2017, to serve in such capacity until the appointment is rescinded by the board or another individual is appointed in his place.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor? It's unanimous, that motion passes.
So we can just go back to our regular agenda.
Okay. So we have to approve our minutes, do we not?
Mm-hmm.
May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the June 27th, 2017?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor? I have a moment for public comment now.
It's your big chance, Mulder.
Okay, seeing that the public wishes to make no comment at this time, let us move on to our regular agenda. Under reports and discussion, we are very fortunate to have our colleagues here to talk to us about the capital project and to update us. So, turn the floor to you gentlemen.
You guys have to switch seats and title?
Yes, it
Yes, they should.
Ceremonial switching of the name, switching of the
Which is
nameplates.
coming up right now.
Except they're running away from their seats as quickly as they can.
They're both running away.
Yeah, they are,
That's a
that's a
problem.
bad sign, Joe.
Either do you want mint? Hi, everybody. How are you?
Good, thanks.
For those of you who haven't really had a chance to meet yet, which I think is just a general, I'm Garrett Hamlin. Just by way of introduction, Tetra Tech is a full-service architecture and engineering firm. We were hired by the district originally to do the 5-year building condition survey, which is actually here. As part of that, we did a full facility evaluation because SED doesn't really ask all the questions or look for all the information. So we worked very closely with Sheldon along the way and came up with really a long-range master plan for the district. And out of that came a series of priorities that evolved into the capital project that voted on December 6th. And I'm happy to report that we've been working very hard to make that project become a reality. We've had a series of meetings with district personnel. Sheldon's been very helpful to us along the way. The facilities committee, I understand the facilities committee has been updating the board at regular board meetings. And Joe, Mr. Bale asked me to come and make a presentation just to give you all an update of where we are and review things. I'm going to start with some slides that are repeats from the November 22nd presentation. So many of you have seen these before, but I'd like to spend a minute and just review the capital project scope. So obviously we all know it's health and safety, windows, doors and lighting, building infrastructure, educational space, and exterior fields and site work. There are copies of my presentation.
Yes,
and then there's another document too, it's the scope document. So I'll make sure that we have those for tonight. So in terms of sort of big overalls, as part of the referendum, we have devised categories that each of these scope items would fall into. Here are the executive level summary of those in all categories. And the scope document that you have before you, I think it's a 34-page document, is exactly the same document that we had during the referendum. Okay? It's actually right off the website. And what I did is I made, with Rich's help, and actually I should have started by saying tonight, Lou Rodriguez from the Colombo group here with us, working very hard along the way. And I also have Rich Michael, architect in my office, senior architect, who's been doing all the real legwork here in the district. So we're closely with Kristen Bouffard. Kristen's still involved in the project. She wasn't unable to be here tonight. So all of the items on the scope document they have before you were exactly the same. But what Rich and I did is we added a column to the right to highlight some things that have adjusted along the way. And I'll talk about those as we go. In general, the project is as we had originally planned. We don't have any big surprises. As we enter design phases for capital projects, we always bump into things that we learn some more as we go more deep into the building. And that was true here. I'll talk about those along the way. So these are the numerical categories of the project. Just to touch base on the numbers a little bit, $12 million project overall. The reason why I wanted to spend a second on this slide is that we had a lot of conversations and some questions along the way during the referendum about the subtotals at the bottom. So if you look at these numbers, we have a construction subtotal of $8 million and change, a project contingency, and a cost escalation after that. So the cost escalation number, I'll start with that, is our best estimate, working with Lou Rodriguez at the Palumbo Group, to come up with what we think the cost may be when we actually bid this project. The project contingency is a two-part contingency. So it's 15% in total, but what we have allocated for the project is 5% for the design phase leading up to bidding, and then 10% for construction contingency. So when we come back to the board next spring to talk about awarding the project after this bid, our goal is to have a construction contingency of 10% for the project. So there's also environmental allowance built into the project, and that all totals up to be just about $9 million and change for actual construction. Then there's 20% incidentals, which covers all the testing, soft costs, construction manager, architects, engineers, attorneys' fees, those expenses as well, printing costs. And then capitalized interest, which is something that Bernie Donegan's office builds in to protect the district from costs during finance. So all of that together builds up to a $12 million project. Are there any questions about that? I'll just stop and take a minute. If there are, that's fine. Just kind of do it, that's fine. Good? Okay. So let's spend a couple minutes and talk about scope. So this is a slide, again, right from last fall, talking about here at the middle high school, roofing work that's going to be done on the building. And I apologize, I guess I'm allowed to carry a laser pointer in school, but when I pointed at the wall, it works fine. When I pointed there, it's a little sketchy sometimes. So the blue areas or shingle roofs are going to be replaced, and the yellow areas are areas that are foam roofs that can be included to extend the life. One thing to point out is during the referendum, go back to this slide in the pre-rep, the area, I'm trying to point at, the right above the blue here, that's white, that was actually showing as yellow. And we have just a graphical error in the presentation. That's an existing EPM that does not need to strike from. So I just want to point that out. And one more point out that this would go. So one of the things that we do during the design phase leading up to this, we talk about what's called creative alternates. And for those of you that have been involved in capital projects before, you have seen these. They're a strategy where we ask contractors to give a separate price on bid rate for very specific steps. So we'll say, give us base bid price for the full project, and then give us some breakout pricing for some division. And then the board has the right to award those alternates. We tell contractors that they have to hold their pricing for 45 days at that stated price. Sometimes those contractors will win the whole price and not that as well. And these are very useful tools for managing project developments because we all promised that we had to achieve the base scope of the project, but there are some things along the way, like 5% design contingency in particular, that we may find that we want to try and accomplish. So in the roofing scope item, that has come to this purple area where we're suggesting that we do this as an alternate, a shingle roof over this part of the building here, and it's sort of connected to the foam roof. We can do the foam roof by itself, but if we've got roofers bidding on this project, we can shingle roofs, we're not going to go ahead and do this as an alternate as well. If the pricing's good, this would certainly be a good alternate to award. Is there any questions?
Do you get a list of all those bid alternates that we can look at them all together and kind of rank them, or do they just come in kind of within 30, 45 days?
We'll give you all a list as we get closer to it. We've identified some that we know make a little sense. What's going to happen next, the documents have been submitted to SED, so they are doing it along the way, we can take which the plan inspector and take those documents actually to us. That's a point where we can go and kind of brass tacks on what needs to be alternates, what can be a base with. You guys will see that full list. We'll share that with you as it's going out to do, which you provide. And then once obviously that's one other thing to point out, this is a little technical, I just want to mention for a second. All things actually on certain projects. You have to be cognizant of that as we recommend the board. So if you have a contract to give you a base bid, and then an alternate that's a really good deal, that could potentially switch who's low bidder if the board awards an alternate. Again, a little technical, we'll go through that again, but so I want to just let people realize this other list is really helpful for us in terms of making sure that we can have affordable projects, and also setting it up so that you'll be able to hopefully get some enhancements on the project as well along the way. Other questions? So let's talk a little about windows. This is the slide from pre-ref, the windows here at this building. And as we go through design, we talked about there are a couple of other windows that might make some sense to try and accomplish if we can afford them on good days. So the greens are the clear spray windows in the cafeteria. The purples in the upper left are some doors into the middle school. The blues in the upper left are actually windows down in the stairways into the basements, into the basement area. And then there are a couple of greens that are also windows in the basement as well. So we're being true to the original scope of the project. We're saying it's just the windows that we promised, and then we're saying that some of these others will make it alternates. I think we did decide that the blue windows are added scope. Just they're in pretty rough shape on the front face of the building. Okay. So if we go over to Chancellor, this is the slide of pre-ref, the windows, and then the greens being the double entry doors. And the one change there is we're saying we think it makes sense to replace some of the other exterior doors on the building, so we want to bid that as an alternative as well. Oh, sorry. No changes on the upper windows at Chancellor or the skylights, they all remain the same. Now let's talk a little bit about site. I know this is a really busy plan, but I wanted to show you this because this is an indication of how the contract documents go together. So that's one page out of the 100 or so pages in the plans, basically. And this is what the contractors will be using to bid on the project. So if and each of those little hex notes represents a certain scope of work, and that's how contractors will price it off. So what I'd like to do is just to simplify that a little bit and talk about what we've got going on here. So the red in the middle is base bid paving work, and the yellow is paving work that we consider as bid alternate. The green, the highlighted green just to the right of the entrance circle and also at the entry to the school, that's curbing replacement. That is also an alternate. But then there's paving replacement right at the main entry to the school. That'll tie in with the ramp replacement as well. The dashed area that runs right along the front of the building, up and down the screen there, that's some drainage improvement work to limit the water coming into the building. The red line on the right is paving work, runway work, and the blue that comes out from the building to the right. Sort of 9 o'clock there is also some paving work. The fields, the outfield and the soccer field are getting renovated, but they're also going to see irrigation. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the irrigation in just one second. Another slide that defines it a little better. One other thing I want to mention about the site work is the long jump, triple jump. It currently sits at the very bottom of the page there on the far side of the track. And so during the referendum we had intended to replace it in its current location, and as we went through some conversations about it, we just realized I made an error in where I located on the screen, so I apologize. This actually doesn't sit here, but it sits here. So the thought is we bid this is base bid to refurbish it right here, replace it in its current location, and then alternate would set it right up here. One of the benefits is moving it out here would make it more of a visible event. It's also a little shady under there, so moving it out in the sun would be helpful if affordable. Rich, can you?
Yeah, so the yellow fonts very complicated.
Is that on the grass back there? Is that off the drive, off the playground?
So let's talk about the irrigation. So originally we had intended to irrigate the fuel pump in the field as we entered into design, we started to realize that it made some sense to consider expanding that area. A lot of conversations about ultimately do this basically irrigating really didn't make the most sense to do it that way. So our conclusion and recommendation is to irrigate that whole area. A little bit of a change, so I wanted to stop and ask you about questions about that you talk.
Maybe you can explain, since I think many people here are probably accustomed to watching soccer on that other field, why the irrigation is going to be focused there and not there.
So you can't you have your septic system inside the track, and you can't irrigate on top of your leach field because then you're just putting all that water into your leach field. So unfortunately, that's a reality for us. Tell me anything else to add to that?
Hydrogen, I think so.
You can use water cannon to water those fields, but not below ground irrigation.
So does irrigating them, are they not playable for a certain amount of time? Because now we're extending it to 2 fields, so I'm just
Yeah,
wondering.
we're going to let you feel that one.
You're talking about the construction process.
Right, so because now it's 2 fields, it'll be whatever you're, irrigated, so.
Actually, you've been able to put in a full irrigation field, and you've been able to play on it right away.
So it won't affect.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's slit installation.
okay.
Yeah, the fields are being reconstructed, but the irrigation system itself is pretty easy to play on. And it shouldn't affect your play. It's really dependent on how much pitch we establish with outdoor season.
It does raise a question, though, that we should touch base on in terms of phasing of construction. We had a lot of conversation with that during the referendum. Lou's going to be working on that with us and with the district while it says at SED. I think you have some general ideas, but really getting down to brass tacks on what fields where and how it's going to play out. Are there things that you could share at this point, or do you want to table that for a moment?
Yeah, I'd like to.
Let me tell you, it's not an easy problem
No.
in terms of how do we keep things running as best as possible along the way. I'm sure we'll figure it out though.
On that topic, and I know there's also will be some discussion of the field work over Chancellor when we get there. But I attended a meeting a week or so ago with our village mayor and our town supervisor, and one of the topics that came up was field space, specifically for us, what fields that they have that we might be able to use while our fields are in a growing season phase or whatever. So it's not something I need tomorrow, but if possible, I would think we're meeting again in early September, and by then I would like to get back to them and say, and again, I know it's all dependent on weather and when this thing gets approved and bid out and all that stuff, I know, but I'd like to give them our best guess as to what off-site fields we'll need to access and when, so they can consider their field use and whether they could let us use this field or that field or both fields and this year or that year or no years or both years. So that discussion is already in play. So I'm going to get back to them with some information, and we'll also get our athletic director involved in that conversation.
So early September time frame for getting back to that.
Yeah.
Go ahead and guess who's in the
Yeah, when we had presented our first schedule, our assumption was we were going to take the fields in May 1st for our original construction schedule. That's based on us bidding to work in February. But it needs to be really thought out and making sure that we can I want to take all the fields if we can. But
sorry, man. Try again.
I'm going to
Rich reminded me to point out that we do have demonstrators in solar, small solar array that's going to go out front of the building as well. So that's part of the project too.
When you say demonstration solar, what is that?
It's a small pedestal array that will sit out in front of the school, not a high production, massive array. So SED will aid up to a 10 kilowatt size. And so beyond that, they have a little trouble reading things. So we're saying let's maximize the building and coming to that. It'll have web-based interface so that the students can see how much energy is being generated. It's a good teaching tool. It's not something that's going to generate at this point a lot of power for the building, a meaningful percentage of the building. I'd like to see that down the road, but certainly not something that we're going for at this point.
What do you anticipate that it would be able to?
10 kilowatt array would, think about, let's see, so 10 kilowatts is 10 to the 3, so 100 watt bulbs. Right? Is there math off on that? Yeah, 100 watt bulbs. Or, and this is always terrible to say it, but it's true. Think about hair dryers. 1,500 watt hair dryers, 5 or 6 hair dryers, exactly. So it's small. Yep, exactly.
So Garrett, before we move on, you say it's going to be on a pedestal?
Yeah.
And where in
So,
front of the building is that?
Rich, can you,
Let's see the link over there. It's going to be right here in this field.
Oh, okay.
That one, that's
Excellent.
probably
In front of the high school.
Okay.
So we really wanted it out and visible so that people will see it and think about it. That's the most important thing. You couldn't tuck it away on a roof, you could tuck it in the back, but my preference is let's get it out front so people at least realize what we're thinking, so we're thinking right. Okay, you good? All right, so Chance. So we're going to renovate the soccer field as base bid here, and we're recommending also renovating the outfield as well as an alternate. The yellow area is some paving improvements that would be an alternate also, and the red, sorry Richard, I'm not talking about that.
That's a sewer extension.
Oh, right, great, thanks. Okay. So let's talk lockers. I think you all have been updated that we had some challenges with lockers, especially in the middle school. So I'm going to take some time. I have like 4 or 5 slides here to go through. And I think it's going to be clear, but you're going to have to hang with me because there's a lot of information that I'm going to have to go through to get this picture explained. So this is the high school. I start with high school, then we'll go to the middle school after that. So these are existing lockers in the building. Red means they're 9-inch wide lockers. And the challenge or trick with locker replacements is when the doors of the lockers are open, you need to maintain 8 feet clear in the hallway. It has to measure 8 feet. SED is very, very adamant. It can't be 7'11", it can't be 7'11 and a half. It has to be 8 feet. That's the code. And the idea is you got to have clear passageway to get people out of the building in case there's some kind of fire event or an emergency event. So in this building, the yellow corridor is less than 12 feet wide, and the orange corridor is greater than 12 feet wide. And I'll explain now why 12 feet is the sort of demarcation point. The standard locker, well, years ago the standard locker was 9 inches. Nobody had back 9 years ago. So, well, the standard locker for classroom work now, not athletic lockers, would be a 12-inch locker. 12 inches wide and 12 inches deep. And so what that means is when you open that locker's door, it takes 2 feet out of the corridor. So if you have corridors on both sides of the hall, that's 4 feet gets taken up by the lockers. 2 for the lockers and 2 for the doors. We have to remember that's when the doors are open that we're shooting for. So if you have corridors that are over 12 feet wide, then you can put lockers on both sides. If you have corridors that are less than 12 feet wide, you can only put lockers on one side. And so, we knew this going in. We had measured the corridors in pre-ref, and we understood that. And, it's not an uncommon thing. So it's a matter of meeting with the principal, meeting with the people who deal with assigning lockers and working out, okay, where are we going to put lockers? And so in the high school, we came up with a solution that looks like this. And the blue is what we refer to as one-tiered or single-tiered locker. So it's a full-height locker. It's about 5 feet tall, and it's one locker. There are 2-tiered lockers. You have some here in the middle school that have a stacked locker. So there's one down below, and then there's one. So this was our first concept for how to replace the lockers here in the high school. And this didn't work for a couple of reasons, mainly related to grade alignment. So we could meet the locker count that's needed in the building, but it didn't really work from a grade alignment standpoint. You couldn't get a full senior class up in the senior hallway. You were splitting people off to the side there with those 45 lockers. And so we had a solution that worked, but didn't work educationally, which is something that we sometimes see. And so what we've come to is an approach that uses the 2-tiered lockers, the locker down below and the locker up above, in very much the similar locations. And in this, if you compare those 2 slides, which I'm sure some of you will after tonight, you'll see that the locker counts in terms of spaces are a little less in this plan. And that's because in order to make that last plan work, we would have to take out some of the display cases and really kind of pack things in. We're moving to this strategy that we're showing here, which is concept 2, which is what the preferred and recommended plan is. This works very well from you don't have to do a lot of extra work on areas where display cases are, those kinds of things. So what this does is in the front hallway, the yellow corridor, it puts lockers only on one side, but it actually comes up with, so what is it, 120, 134 lockers technically in that area, which is more than enough. And what it will mean is that either every child who wants a locker gets either an upper or a lower. And what we find, and this actually happens in my son's school, is that when you have some extra half lockers like that, some kids will not want lockers at all for whatever reason. They just don't use their lockers. And some kids will want 2 lockers. So you'll have the ability to have kids have 2 lockers in some instances if you want. It's a little bit of a management issue in terms of program, like it gets 2, it gets 1, and those kinds of things. So that's not, I'm not saying, you want to go there, but it does offer that option if that's something that needs to happen. And then the same thing in the other quarters as well. So technically, you're going to have a little over 300 columns of lockers, but they're going to be 2-head lockers, so it'll be closer to 740 lockers technically in this part of the building. It's not a perfect solution, but neither is the other, and this is clearly the one that the building administrator said made the most sense for that. I'll talk about the middle school next, but before I do that, why don't I stop, and are there questions about lockers here in the high school?
Can you just tell us how high a 2-tiered locker would be?
Yep, they'll be very similar to the ones that are in the middle school now. I think they're 5 feet tall, so it's 2.5.
2.5. Okay, great.
And how does that compare size-wise to the lockers they have now?
So if you did a sort of square inch volumetric comparison of the two, it's going to be smaller, but what we find is they're more useful because they're wider so you can get stuff in there, where the narrow lockers, you get a lot more space, but you just can't get as much in there. So,
I have a question about, in the hallways that exist now, the top hallway, there are lockers on both sides, right? So what will happen to the side of the hallway where you're removing lockers? What do you do with that space?
yeah, so those lockers will come out completely, and then the areas where the lockers are will be filled in. So it'll just be a sheet lock.
Oh, just a wall, okay.
Wall there, basically. Yeah. We want to look at that a little more closely and just define exactly how it's going to go. We have nothing that in the SED sector that improved. It's something that we want to take a look at and show the administration, show you guys, make sure that you're comfortable.
So that space you were just talking about, that couldn't be used like for more displays or
yeah.
something for
Absolutely.
teachers to use?
Yeah, that's exactly why, we want to talk about that.
Student artwork.
It's another
Right.
opportunity. Yep, exactly. Yeah.
So, I haven't done the math, but, so how many lockers are we providing per grade level, and how many lockers less are we gonna have now that we have before?
Okay, so the goal is 125 lockers per grade. That's more than your current student population, but it would allow you some room to grow. I don't have, we can do the math, but I haven't done the calculation recently more to tell you what the before and after loss is. I think you can probably look at it a couple different ways. You could look at it as you're actually increasing lockers, but they're the smaller lockers. I know for sure we're losing locker columns because we're not going to have ones down the road.
Yeah, and I just remember
So are we
from
losing
our
87 lockers?
earlier discussions, there were like,
It's
say 140 lockers per grade level or something like that.
Sounds
The
about
number
right.
they have here
We're shooting for
is 371 times 2.
It's anybody's
Yeah,
guess
so
as
this
to
is
what
a
the
five
population of the
versus-
school is going to be down the road. This double height locker situation actually, will allow the school population to grow and we wouldn't be hampered by the lockers. The other thing to keep in mind is, down the road, if you ever needed to put more lockers in, you could always move that one wall on the other side, make the classroom slightly smaller and add more lockers too. Certainly not really a worthwhile expense at this point, considering what we got going on, but I just want to mention that.
So just so I'm clear, on that, so we're actually adding more than 100 lockers in the end, even though they're smaller, is that right?
Because if you've got 371 times 2,
Yes.
that's 740.
And we currently have 587.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, so we can do the math right here. You have 587 right now that are 9-inch one-tier lockers, and we're going to end up with 371 columns times 2 or 742. Does that make sense?
So
It makes sense what you're saying, it doesn't make sense that we're adding lockers, I guess.
that many lockers.
That many
Because if the
additional
goal is
lockers.
125, we only need 500 lockers, right?
Right, we could talk about reducing the locker count if we want to, that's absolutely fine. Don't mind having that conversation at all.
We also talked about having, up and down or something.
Yeah, and that's really the question is.
If you had 90, I think if you had 92 per grade level, you could actually take that to one.
Yeah,
I think
I mean,
next
that
year the high school has about 371 kids.
Yeah,
Each could have an up and down,
Yeah.
almost.
that would
Right.
make
The
sense.
problem that the principals see is it breaks up the grade levels. Yeah, you could have one per kid, but you did, here's the 9th grade and the 10th grade begins immediately. So they like to have the one wing be for the 10th graders, one's for the 11th, one's for the seniors.
Yeah,
They
they
try to
probably-
do it that kind of
I think that's
control.
We only have 3 hallways of lockers anyway, so that only
Somebody's
covers
broken up
3.
anyway.
Yeah.
We have to add shelves and lockers sometimes, too, so this limits that issue. Plus, it needs to be ADA accessible one also.
Believe me, we've been around about the lockers a lot, and because we knew it was a real issue, and we wanted to come up with the best solution, and frankly, I think this is the best solution. Now, the one thing that's coming out of it tonight that I'm hearing is maybe we don't want to put 371 columns in, is the question I think we should dive in a little bit.
Can I ask a question about I know we have the double locker format already in the middle school. Would this be essentially the same height with, I'm just thinking, because we're talking long-range planning about how we're using space. I wouldn't want to put in a bunch of lockers that would be inappropriate if for some reason different age groups were circulating in different parts of the building. So not that that's happening, but I just, since we're investing in something that should last for a long time, we want it to be maximally kind of versatile.
Yeah, they'd be just like the ones that are in middle schools.
Okay, perfect.
Same configuration.
That's actually-
And they work pretty well in middle school,
Yeah.
actually. I think here, but also we've seen that in other schools. Okay? So, the middle school, so existing in the middle school, you have 252 9-inch lockers in the front corridor, and then 63 columns, which is 126 in the purple running up and down the sheet. The one thing about these graphics, and I should have said this at the outset, they're a little bit diagrammatic at this level because I needed to sort of make it understandable so that the lockers aren't quite to scale, they're not that big in reality. And in the purple in particular, you'll notice that they just, they all do, they run right by the doors. So they're in that one quarter, there are separate chunks that run up the wall, basically. They total to be the 63 columns. So, the same situation here, the front corridor is less than 12 feet. And so we came up with a concept that looked like this, and this really didn't work for the educators at all. Number one, we would have had to have gone to 2-tiered lockers in that front corridor to meet their locker counts. I'm showing 168 right now, but that's single column, so I could double that number if I went to 2. They were very concerned about doing that because of the congestion of putting all the kids on one side of the corridor, having everybody in like this, and I have to tend to agree with them. That would have been a challenge. We could have distributed some down to the side corridor there in the addition, but then we ran into some other grading issues. So the recommendation here is what we're calling concept 2, and this is to actually refurbish the 9-inch lockers. So, Will, can you just describe what a refurbishment of a locker would be? What happens when you refurbish a locker?
Sure. Refurbishment of a locker, the first thing to do is look at the hardware of the locker and retool it. So the hinges will be retooled, and then the locking mechanism will be retooled, and then the carcass is spray painted. And we would frames would be painted, and the lockers would be retagged. That's normally what we would do in the process. So the first thing we would do is strip the locker of everything, spray paint it, retag it, retool it, and then basically when you get it back, as long as the hardware is in good shape, we've had really good success in the refurbishment of lockers.
I really wanted to replace those lockers, and we worked really hard to do it, and a number of people, Sheldon included, convinced me that it just didn't really make the best sense, especially educationally, to do that. So I'm sensitive to that we said new lockers, and that was part of the referendum dialogue. So that's why I really wanted to slow down and talk about this, because I understand that we're saying, okay, we're going to refurbish some lockers because we couldn't come up with a good solution that met the educational needs. So I'm okay with it, but I want to hear how you guys are.
So before you do that, I just have a question, because the first plan here, the principals didn't like having all the kids on one side of the wall. That wasn't a concern at the high school, because all the lockers are on the one side of the wall.
We had more concern about the 6th and 7th graders, all being on the one side of the wall. And he met with his dad, discussed on the grade.
And the high school, they're not worried about? They're not worried about high schoolers all being there at the same time?
Plus, we have a lot more lockers for high schoolers, too, so it's not going to be, I guess it's not going to be everyone in above and below locker. Almost get to the point where everyone can just have the top line or bottom floor. Because there's more flexibility in high school. So you don't have to utilize all the lockers.
7, which is really a full grade right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Between the periods, you got still just the one column, but you have 2 kids, one doing above, one down below. And it just got they just thought too much congestion. That just thought it'd be just better for management's sake to keep it the way it is and put on the 7th side of the hallways.
And then,
I was just saying, and also in the middle school, all kids use their lockers. I think they all use their lockers when you do. And a lot of high school kids don't use lockers.
they're too small.
And that's the real question is do they not use their lockers because they're 9-inch lockers, or do they not use
Yeah.
them because they don't want them? It's hard to tell. We'll know soon.
So if their binders are. So for for the middle school, so the reason they originally were going to be replaced is because they were in bad shape? What was the original reason?
Well, I think the main driving factor was that they were the 9-inch lockers and they're less usable that way. I think they also, guys are looking at it.
Oh, right, because the smaller.
Yeah, I mean, they're in rough shape.
That's the bigger lockers.
They're in rough shape, and they definitely painted, they were dented inside, and they're not in great shape. We talked about refurbishing those also.
I forgot the smaller lockers were in the one hall.
Garrett, in this week, that no, it's all the principals. And like the idea that they're wired, get a backpack area, you can put coats in there.
So I think we have a solution that both of us are able to. So that's it for the lockers, folks. It is a hard situation, and I think we did the best we could. I think we're doing the best we could. Any other thoughts? Flooring. So the orange flooring is as we had in the pre-ref. The only difference is right in front of the gym, there are 2 little spaces here that came up with some asbestos. And we need to deal with those too. So that's the only flooring scope change. The purple is an idea for an alternate to replace the cafeteria floor, which I think is a good one. There are some other flooring alternates that we're also considering, maybe some corridors if it's affordable. I get nervous about the money, Lou gets nervous about the schedule, and Sheldon makes the darn good case that, boy, if we could change out those floors, it would be fantastic. We've got a pretty good team working there. I think, as I hear myself say that, I think it's pretty apparent to me that we're all bringing our own perspective to this and coming to the best solutions. So I'm confident that we'll get this as well.
Gary, if you would just address the question as to whether doing this work does leave any asbestos tile flooring in that building?
Yes, there will be. What we like to do is to get out when we're doing work that involves asbestos, to get out in the areas where we're working, so that we're not kind of do a partial job of a given area. But there will still be asbestos in this building, most notably, floor tiles. They don't get all the floor tiles, so the asbestos in the building. It's a mess. The glue.
Is that confined to one area?
That's pretty much.
All over? Yeah.
It's safe. You gotta say though, it's safe. So it's all over, but it's it's not. It's safe.
The aspect in the corridors in the whole part of the building
if you put asbestos in anything, floor tiles I think is the safest place to put it. If it's air cell, the typographic and damage, and that stuff, that's where it becomes more of an issue. So if we look at the second floor, no changes on the second floor. This is as we scoped originally and what we're intending to do here. So, to the last slide, essentially, we want to talk a little bit about schedule. So, if you go back and you look at the schedule from pre-ref, this is exactly the same schedule, except for what I did is I split S&D submission and then review and approval into two separate timeframes. So, we submitted on time. Our team was hustling to get this into SED because the review times at SED is actually going up. So it's, I checked this afternoon, it's 32 weeks for mechanical review. Crazy. I'll talk a little bit about that in a second, but then it's 22 weeks for architectural review. It literally takes 8 months to get something out of SED. It's crazy. That said, SED is working really hard to change that, and for many years it was kind of like incremental changes a little bit here and there, but they had the director of facilities move on, and a new director of facilities who I think is terrific, Roseanne Roth. They have an active dialogue going on with Roseanne, and she comes from the architectural industry. Carl Thurman was an engineer, so me too. But she brings a perspective that I think is pretty refreshing. They're really trying to get review times under control. And they're looking at making some big changes. It won't affect us in this project, but down the road, they're really looking at some third-party reviews and getting some staff increases, ways that I think will help. Long and short of it for us, so we're 8 months. So Lou wants to bid this thing in February, and so do we. So we're going to be shooting for spring bid as soon as it comes out of S&P, because we want to get the bid market right, and we need to give contractors enough time to get mobilized and ready to start in the summer. So we'll bid sometime in the spring, hopefully February, March timeframe, and then construction in 2018 and 2019 years. Those years are going to be crazy. It's just, construction's a bummer, it's hard work. I use the birthing analogy, and I probably shouldn't because I'm not anymore, but it's like going to a regular room. We'll keep things under control as best we can, and sometimes people's heads spin around in the middle of that, so we'll just do our best. The one thing I know for sure is that the kids will be safe, the occupants will be safe, it will be inconvenienced, that's the problem. So the reason why I take a minute to talk about that is it's important to start to prepare both ourselves and the people in the building that the construction's going to be hard. It's inconvenience, and you're going to have to put up with things, and that's not to say just roll over and be proactive, but just realize it's going to be like renovating a kitchen in your house, or you don't have a kitchen for a while, and you're trying to live out of your bathroom with all that stuff, so we'll have some
Garrett, so you say construction 2018-19. Originally, when we talked about this, we were trying to get the bulk of the work done during the summer months. Is that still the plan? Okay, good.
Absolutely. So it's, contractors refer to them as summer slammers. You're just going crazy as soon as the kids are gone, and you are racing right up till the kids come back. It's surprising. It's amazing actually how much work can happen productively if it's well planned and scheduled over a summer period, and especially if it's actually towards the end. And you think, oh my God, this place is like a wreck. It comes together. So we've seen it again. Now listen, I overstate construction because I want people to realize it's going to be hard. It's a bit of an overstatement though, but you wouldn't want me saying, oh, it's going to be great, because then it's hard. What's happening. Okay. So, we do this for a living. Done dozens and dozens and dozens of construction projects in the summer, in schools, and it's what we do. So we'll make it work. Okay. So go ahead.
So if this timeline, if everything works great. I think you were saying construction would start like when the kids are out in June, but I thought you said you wanted the fields in May. So what would be the earliest, if everything went according to plan, the earliest the construction would
For
start?
starting,
For starting.
well, if we got lucky and got out of S&D in time, we could sometimes see spring break as a good time to get some work done. I think that's way over ambitious, but if you ask me what's the earliest, I'd
Right.
say in a project like this, spring break.
Yeah, so I mean, construction is messy and inconvenient, but I'm sure you're aware of this, a lot happens at the end of the school year here. So, if it, even meant starting later, if it was gonna,
There's things that we did that will have to happen second shift. There's no way, when you look at this project, it's over $9 million worth of work. Even when you split it up into 2 summers, you're not getting done $4 million worth of work or $4.5 million worth of work in 6 weeks. It's not gonna happen. So what we do, for example, there's electrical upgrades. The electrical upgrades that we're gonna be doing for the new generator and everything else, there's new transformers going in. We can do that work at night. We can run conduit, we can run wire, so that when the summer comes, we can switch over, that all of that backbone has been done. That needs to happen second shift. There's no way that the electrician's gonna get all that work done during summer. It's just not gonna happen. The window replacement, the curtain wall replacement over at Chancellor, that will start, and we're gonna push it to probably the fall. We're gonna focus on making sure that we schedule and phase the classrooms, but there's no way that you can do all of that work over the summer. It's just not possible without the quality being sacrificed.
Yeah.
So we'll present a plan. The administration has to approve the plan, the board has to approve that plan before we go out to bid.
It'll just take a lot of voices to make sure that,
That's right.
everybody's.
Lighting's a good example of second shift work. And that lighting replacement can just happen along the way. That'll all work really well. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just wondering if it's during the school year when everyone's here working, have you taken or planned where everyone's going to be parking all of your vehicles?
Well, again, during the school year, we run a second shift. So really,
It won't overlap.
no, we wouldn't be working while students are building. So right now, if you go out the parking lot, it's empty. If I had a crew in here, on the electrical side, it'd be, for the scope that we're talking about, it'd be a 5-man crew. And we, designate parking for those guys that are working.
And there'll be construction areas too, because they're going to have, storage boxes and a trailer, those kinds of things. And we'll work through where all that's going to be, so that it inconveniences you guys as little as possible. One thing I want to just point out, Lou's a contractor by nature, so he talks about we're doing work, but Lou's your construction manager. And I like that, because you take ownership, but it's really important to understand that Lou's not building these things for you. That you're going to hire contractors, they're going to work directly for you. Lou works for you, we work for you, and that's the way it works. Because sometimes I think it would be easy to think, oh, who's building this? And you know what? If you were to build it, it would make my life.
You would do that in 2 summers? That's amazing.
Give him a golden hammer.
Can I go back to the SED for a minute? Sure. In the last facilities meeting minutes that we went through, there was some talk about then being 8 months to get something reviewed and possibly going Plan B now instead of submitting to SED. What's kind of the time frame for making that decision if we do have the ability to go third party to get the approval? And I'm just worried submitting something June 30th, I mean, my firm gets nothing done over the summer, right? I mean, I'm sure people take vacation. I could imagine this 8 months becoming 10, and then can we not start the project in the spring? So is there a time frame where we have to say we have to make a decision and go a different route, and will you be in that loop?
Well, we'll definitely be in that loop. They are submitted to SED, so they're already in, basically. What SED did, they just issued a memo on what the plans are. So come January 1st, they're going to have the third party, it's like phase one of third party review. That's coming through BOCES because they had to procure, they're using them to do the procurement basically. And so districts can choose come January 1st to go into a third party review. People who are in the queue can choose, so at that point you can choose. There'll be a fee for it. It's actually a relatively nominal fee. It's like $9,000 for $10 million to $20 million projects. So all aidable, to do that. My personal reaction is probably makes a lot of sense to go third party. You can sit in the queue and stay there, and the queue's gonna evacuate because everybody's jumping to third party reviews. But I think it's probably the way to go. We'll have a better read of it when we get closer, but that's my first reaction.
Just to clarify, so I understand what Steve's asking, where the third-party review doesn't start until the winter.
Right.
So we got ours in, and third-party review is not available now. I mean, as so much with SED, they talk a good game, but when the reality is, well, we're not going to be able to do it for another 6 months. So it's not like that was an option for us now that we decided not to go.
Right.
This is, what we're doing now is the only option that exists now.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. We did think there was going to be an option, but I heard a rumor that it was going to happen on July 1st, but that was...
Yeah, Roseanne Roth at our ASBO meeting said she had hoped they would be all open July 1st.
So then Rich and I were discussing about wait until July 2nd.
But I mean, you make a good point. If other people are going to go third party, maybe that helps us. Being in the queue, maybe that helps take some of the pressure off that. Maybe it saves us a few weeks.
Yeah. I've been doing this for 16 years. This is on the long end of how long the CP has been. I've never seen it to 10 months, as I recall. There's always the first thing, yes. But, this is like, I hate not being able to control some things. And this is one thing where it's completely out of my control. It's just, we have to get in there and we're doing everything we can. We just have to wait. This and midday are the worst moments for me because, at the contractor's mercy. So.
The other thing is 25% of their staff is vacant. They don't have the permission to hire. So I don't know where that is, and hopefully they get the permission to hire. But 6 weeks ago, they had 25% vacancies, but did not have the authority to go out and hiring. It was done over the state. So hopefully the state has given permission and they'll hire the 6 or 7 engineers and architects that they need to fill those jobs.
Funny story. I took the exam when it came out because I wanted to see what it was like. And so I got called saying from Carl, are you serious about coming to SED? And I said, oh no. And that's it, folks. I know I took an hour.
Thank you so much.
I can just ask one more question, just for clarity. I didn't see it unless I dozed off, but there's no full replacement work at Chancellor, correct?
Correct.
Sure you didn't doze off, Clarence? Presentation was scintillating. Thinking about lockers all night.
Any last questions for these guys before they...
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. They could just, if they really did, and then reform, like the Harry Potter lockers, because there's no lockers.
We can actually move it up.
Oh, for the board president, yeah.
Move what up?
Clean up.
Fire inspector.
Oh, let's do it right away.
I mean,
Well, actually, it's next thing on the agenda, so.
Oh, I'll move over. Okay. Wait, this is on my, is this your set? So custom to mine. That's my water.
Mixing grades. Oh my God, it's so different over here.
You can sign this if you want.
Yeah.
Digger, are you all packed?
Don't stress around. Come on.
I'm partially back. Sure Mark's completely back. Right, Mark? We keep it weighing the bag, you know?
Joe,
Yes.
would you consider turning down the AC?
Oh, yes.
Is it,
Yeah, if you ask real nice.
is it hot over there?
No,
or-
I have the button that says
You get the brunt of it.
too warm
Pretty
or too
please,
cool.
unless anybody, you know, with reorganization, if anybody wants to change seats back. If somebody
No
runs
better
hot
here, it goes on your
The
feet.
downside of the air
Thank you,
conditioning is
gentlemen.
that you're
Thanks,
blocked
guys.
from the camera.
Safe trip back.
You're blocked from the camera a little bit, so.
So that's the
put up
bonus of
That's the
being
bonus
outside.
for being cold.
Okay, so I adjusted the
Cold, but I'm
temperature.
not on camera.
Not completely.
So we
Thank you.
Or, you know, do what I do and just bring an
Continue
extra
that
scarf.
Let's rock
Just
on.
kinda- You gotta keep it.
When you start sweating, let me know and
Any of the
I'll
school board
reverse
meetings
the
you go to, not
direction.
just this.
I just figured I'd take the opportunity in case anybody ran particularly hot. I was like, no, I'm really hot here. I would love to sit where it's freezing.
I turned it to 82 degrees, so let me know. Turned up the heat, as it were.
You're gonna be here long enough for that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you probably
Either that or he's
doesn't-
trying to put us
probably
to
doesn't
sleep.
need
It can go the other way, too, so.
Get out of the kitchen.
All right.
Okay, so, do I just say at this point, or what?
Yeah, well, the
Okay,
next thing on
Next
our
on the
agenda.
agenda, 4.2, is the 2016-17 fire inspection report.
Okay, so there you have information in your packets, which I'm sure you've devoured at home. As I may have mentioned, the date of the fire inspection report moves by a month every year. So last year, the fire inspection report was in June. This year, it's in May. Next year, it'll be in April. You get the idea, okay? And this is SED that sets the schedule. Those same people that brought you third-party review, but not until January. So this is the first time in several years where we've had an inspection when teachers and students have been here. For the last couple of years, it's been during the summer. Nobody's here. Everybody's taken their microwaves and their little mini fridges and toasters and stuff home. They're not here. The rooms are already been, a lot of them torn down. They're cleaning the rooms. So it's not a typical environment. So we had a conversation that as to whether we wanted to let the inspection happen without giving all of our staff a heads up and alerting them, and let's see what it looks like, warts and all, kind of a real world inspection. We haven't had the benefit of that for the last several years just because of when it's been scheduled. So we kind of bit the bullet and decided to let it rip. And as you can see in the information that I provided to you, there were a lot of nonconformances. I mean, I'd just be perfectly honest, there were a lot of nonconformances. Most of them were minor. There were a few more serious ones, but as I mentioned in my note to you, even the more serious ones were very easily rectified. As I'd mentioned, one of them that was either a major or a severe was curtains in the middle school. And as I mentioned to you, it was a backdrop that a particular teacher had been using with his classes to, shoot video or whatever they were doing, and he was storing it out in the hallway at the top of the stairs, and that's either a major or a severe issue. How do we solve it? Take it down, get it out of there, okay? I mean, the solution was easy. Unfortunately, how long was it sitting out there in the hallway creating a potentially serious issue? So in fairly short order after the first inspection, Sheldon and his guys had everything taken care of. But when they, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sheldon, when there are major or severe items on the list, they have to come back and do a reinspection, as they should. And they did a reinspection several weeks later, and of course, everything was fine, because it had all been taken care of. And then you submit for your certificate of occupancy, and you get to use your facility next year. So Sheldon was nice enough to hang around in case you had any questions about anything specific on this list, or generally. But I think the problem is going to be that, especially with many of the minor ones, like unapproved multi-plug adapter use. You know, people using power strips and plugging stuff in them, and by and large, it's not school stuff. They're not plugging computers into those. They're plugging mini fridges and microwave ovens and personal items. So when they go home for the summer, which is why we didn't have the problem the last couple of years for a summer inspection, because we make them take all that stuff out of here, if only to make it easier for his guys to clean, so they're not pulling all this personal stuff out of here. It'll come back in the fall, and we'll be having these things occur again. And we've already talked about a plan going forward where come September, Sheldon or some people he designates, that's up to him to manage, we're gonna have to do our own mini inspections every month for the first several months and nip this thing in the bud and say, you can't plug it in that way. Get it out of here. Move it. Plug it into a wall plug. You can't daisy chain these power strips. Yeah, and you may have heard they had a fire down in Dover this past year based on an overloaded power strip. So it can happen. I mean, it was not, no one was injured, but fire's a fire, and you never want a fire in your building. So that's kind of the broad brush. We don't currently have a policy that prohibits all these personal appliances. Might be something to think about, but we don't have policy. And we've seen some school districts that have policy, but it's related to cleanliness, pest control. They don't want people cooking stuff and eating stuff in their rooms because they don't have to worry about critters. Again, something for us to give some thought to as we move forward. But there has to be the will to start telling people to subvert a habit that many of them have gotten into. And except for a bed, some of them could live in these classrooms.
Diane?
Sorry.
I'm not joking.
No, I know, and I just have a picture of Sheldon's office full of
Contraband.
extension cords and.
Well, yeah.
All joking aside, I mean,
Yes.
I think obviously safety is important, but I know that some of their staff, it makes their life a little better, and our students who get popcorn or some other things from the microwave. Since we're doing a capital project, is there any way to provide some additional plugs, as he was just talking about electrical work? Is that even, I mean, I don't know how you do that or how you make it fair, but is that something that could fix some of the issue?
I mean, it's something that we have done in-house, other media air conditioners, there have been some computers have, some of the best computers have been pulled out as first. It's still an issue with the placement of it is conflict. Typically, like in the elementary school, they put them in their little counter there, they stack them up in the refrigerator, on top of that. We were having a really pest management policy that does work quite well. Basically, you're saying you shouldn't have food in your classrooms anyway. And also, there's also issues with the kids, and especially in the eating. There's issues with cooking in classrooms. Yes, we can put more outlets in there, so.
Well, that's why I said a few moments ago, if you're gonna have a policy, the board has to have the political will to say, this stops. And I'm not saying whether you should or shouldn't, but unless you do, we're gonna be playing this game constantly, or just taking the power strips away from them, and then they'll have these appliances sitting in there not plugged into anything. And the next time we find one, it's a fire hazard, we know that. Daisy chaining, not just plugging it into a proper wall socket, but, so do we want to spend, this is a rhetorical question. I'm not asking anybody to answer it now, but do we want to spend the money to be putting additional electrical wiring to accommodate for personal appliances? If the answer is yes, then we can do that. If the answer is, heck no, there's things we'd rather be spending our money on than that, then there's an answer to the question. I'm just bringing this to your attention right now. That's all.
Sheldon, did you want to speak to it?
I just want to say about also energy usage. Each one of the refrigerators is plugged into the classroom, which is energy. Some are pretty old. Also aren't Energy Star compliant. So we want to make it at least restricted to certain compliant appliances. Or when I first started here, I mean, common predecessor, I had each classroom has a share. Basically, not even nothing you do here, but you get short. It's not really strong. Bring the lunch into the day.
If at some point the board should want us to pursue this, we could certainly find or compose a policy. But it's not my inclination to spin our wheels doing that if the board doesn't want to go down that road, so.
Laura and then Steve.
I'm just wondering if there are any approved surge strips, that kind of thing. I mean, I get the microwave with the coffee pot with the, refrigerator all stacked up, that's crazy. But are teachers allowed to use surge strips at all, or does everything have to be plugged into a wall?
The only thing that's supposed to be plugged into the surge strip is computers.
And what?
Your printer.
Right, okay, yeah. I just didn't know what you said, that's all.
You can't plug, like the laptop, I found the laptop cover plugged into power strip. That was one of the violations of the state.
Yeah, it's like 30 laptops plugged into one power strip.
Oh, yeah.
Insane.
Right. Might even be a memo.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Maybe there needs to be a little education
Maybe
about
people
how
just
to
need
plug
some-
things in.
Do extension courses in classrooms.
You can.
Only for temporary requirements, so something you use for a day. But you can't plug something in and place it on requirements in extension cord. It's not required. And you can't plug a refrigerator to an extension cord around the wall.
Right. Have we ever put something out to the staff, like so that they
Just
know that?
rules.
They actually, this year, I think at the first day of school, our fire inspector /
Yeah, I get what they call it.
he actually talked about the door.
Bloodborne pathogen,
Power strips,
all those other things.
much of that will-
Right to
this is
know.
the first year that he actually went over with the teachers. They know, like.
Tell them.
Steve?
Laura asked my question, but I would say, I'd be up for doing something if the self-policing doesn't work. I think the board can take it up, but I think, telling the teachers that this is a serious issue, we've had fires in other districts, and see how they respond before making it an official policy would be my suggestion.
Well, I mean, telling them is one thing, and it obviously hasn't worked for some of our staff. And I think the next step would be, like we've discussed, do inspections and, towards the beginning of the school year and say, this is the problem, this has to stop. And then if there's a solution to deal with that, we can look into that. But I mean, you look at the list of things here, and there's a lot of stuff here. And I think after a certain point, the guy who was doing the inspection probably just got tired of putting it on the list. And there's enough of these on here, that you got a problem, so deal with the problem. So, I mean, I'm more than happy to start that way, and every year this is gonna happen. Because for the next 8 months, the inspections will be during the school year. So there's no getting away from it unless they change their schedule, but.
For a while, I mean, when I first got the situation kind of get worse and worse.
Yeah.
There's always the situation where too many people turn on their microwave while they had the refrigerators on, and then their computers go off on the other side of the room. So like, once those computers out, it's not happening anymore, but that was an issue.
Is no one using the faculty rooms? Is that-
Well, that's what I was
Yeah,
going to
what's
mention,
with the
because
faculty?
one of the solutions that Shell and I came up with is if we take away the microwaves and the refrigerators and all that, we're going to have to go to their faculty rooms and beef that up.
Right.
That, it just can't have one microwave.
No.
When you have,
But it could have one for
you have 20 teachers, this is their period they eat. You can't just have one microwave. No, we'll have to have a bank of them. We provide that. I think where most people get a little iffy is when it comes to refrigerators. Maintaining those things, throwing the stuff out, people taking stuff that isn't theirs.
Yeah.
This is my half and half. No, this is mine. No, that's going to be the nutso part of it if we try to do that and consolidate that into the faculty rooms.
As far as keeping stuff cold.
Yeah, no, Mark, go ahead, Sam.
So I just want to be clear on this, so these minor electrical infractions that are on the list, you think the majority of those are for personal items, not educational equipment of some kind?
Excuse me.
And sometimes we just find a power strip, probably no power strip, just somebody's internet, and they just plug something in, and they plug something else in, just so they can do it. Like the elementary schools, it's more, there's more of an issue, a lot more appliances in the elementary school than there is. I think that's because teachers kind of, they're in that.
They're there all day.
Yeah, so it's not their place.
We just wanted to bring this to your attention. We're going to try to do something about it when school comes back in, but I just wanted you all to know, especially given this ample list, what's going on. The other thing that's written up on this list quite a bit is the lockage of doors, and you might want to just address that briefly. I don't want to spend a half an hour talking about that, but
Doors are supposed to be shut during the day, shut
The classroom doors or the outside doors?
classroom doors, yeah.
They, not supposed to use wedges.
Like if there's a fire, then it allows smoke to escape out into the hallway, and that's the rationale. And we're gonna, part of this project work is to replace door hardware. So when the project's done, it's gonna be an even bigger issue, and we're gonna be the door chock police. I'm just saying, you know, I'm not trying to be funny about it, it just.
Some doors in the school don't have door closure on them right now, and they will after the project, so some of the doors are just leave open and stay open.
Right.
I mean, there is an inconvenience when kids go out and they gotta come back in, and the other issue is, aside from fire safety, there's also a security issue. You know, if there's an intruder in your building, that door needs to be closed and locked and made impossible for somebody who doesn't belong in your classroom to get into your classroom. But in order to do that, the doors have to be locked, they've got to be closed. You can't be fiddling around with your keys, locking the door when, you know, alert, 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 intruder alert. You can't be, you know, wow, where are my keys? Oh, I left my keys in my coat in my locker at the back of the room, and now I'm worried. You know, that's another issue with the door closures and locked doors. And yeah, go ahead.
And a lot of it was, at least when we did as far as classroom segregation. There's no way there to close the doors. So if you have a fire, you can just do a fire drill. Or you can do a lockdown.
So how do people get into those empty rooms? Like, do all the teachers have keys that would let them in? Like, are they leaving them open because they want to use them at some point and they have to get someone else to open them?
It might be inconvenient to take your keys with you, or,
But every teacher could get it, would have a key that would open it?
no. Not every teacher can open every other teacher's classroom.
Well, yeah, because you're saying they're empty classrooms, so I'm like, if somebody wanted to get in and they're locked.
So when you go down to the copy room to make 30 copies, you should be locking the door behind you, but it's a pain to have to pull your keys out and lock your door,
You have
and
to
go
lock,
downstairs, then come back and unlock your, it's inconvenience, you know, I mean,
Okay, got it.
So as it is by the policy of keeping the doors closed and locked while the students are in classroom, am I understanding correctly that if students go out to the bathroom, somebody else would have to get up to let them in?
it's a disruption, yeah.
And I also wanted to mention, on the personal appliances, I don't know how widespread it is, but I've come across it with my kids that some teachers let kids put food in the fridge as well, which is great, you know, for the kid, but just makes for a bigger potential
Yes, it does.
problem.
I actually have a question, Joe. Is there, if there are repeated infractions, let's say if we have repeat visits and that, you know, the problem isn't addressed, are there consequences we need to know about?
You need to fix it. I mean, I've never heard of anybody losing their state aid or
It's your occupant.
having the director of facilities taken away in handcuffs or anything.
Yeah, right,
You
right.
don't get a certificate of occupancy. You're
Okay.
not supposed to occupy the building.
Right.
And, I mean, I know that there are schools that have the inspections and they don't get the inspections, so they don't do inspections.
Again, until
You don't have a lot of time from your fire inspection and your re-inspection to when your certificate of occupancy, maybe July 1st this year. That, let's see, also, yeah.
all right, Jeff.
Also, back on the keeping the doors closed, are any teachers keeping doors open for air circulation? I mean, is it too hot as well? And
So they need to plug a fan in.
Not with that
But not,
extension
not with
cord.
an extension cord.
Onto the wall.
I mean, we don't have an air-conditioned building, so
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yes,
go back.
Liz.
for some
I just-
people, it's an issue.
Maybe, I don't know, maybe are the needs more for electrical plugs? Not to go back, but like what you're saying with the doors open and then they need a fan and then, you know, yada, yada. I don't know.
Do we have sufficient plugs, I guess is the
Do
question.
we have sufficient
Yeah.
plugs?
With
for
the new technology, with things that we have.
Perhaps you
And
could
We have
charging your
sufficient
ask
plugs
for
for
an
the
assessment.
educational needs of the district.
With
We
laptops.
Right.
with the
But
changing
that's-
needs
Have
of
it
the
for the
district.
educational needs, but they're being repurposed for other things. If there's ever a need for a plug because of education, he's on it. He's making sure that there's electricity for it. But he's not gonna, his crew's not gonna go out of the way to put a plug in for a personal appliance.
Sure.
But, you know, for the heat, you know, some of those rooms at Chancellor are
They're very
really, really
hot.
hot.
I
So
get it.
they're gonna need to have fans.
And that's the
or-
door locking part of it, that's not the
Right, not the
power
coffee
strip
pot,
part of
right.
it, so.
And particularly like up in the BMS hallway up here, high hallway. Like if you open up the doors, you do have doors open, and most conditions
Yeah.
Better. It's not nice, it's better.
Would
But I
it,
think
would
there's
it,
three issues with the pest issue. And I think we have to have an integrated pest management.
Do we have pests?
do we have pests?
We don't have a particular pest problem, but we have ants, yeah. We have a company that comes and does one. We have nothing unusual.
No child-eating rats.
Bears walking through with food for
Yeah.
And it's the fire.
So we have an obligation when we have the annual fire inspection, to put it on the agenda and have you, now we have a record that you have reviewed it, you're aware of it, and I asked Sheldon to be here in case there were questions, because this was a bumper crop of things. Usually it's been a half dozen things maybe. So you're aware.
Would it be appropriate to ask for a follow-up so that we could, I don't know, maybe when school starts, hear about attempts to communicate with the staff around these issues, and maybe you can take the temperature about whether you see any change in behavior and compliance with
Sure we can.
these regulations, and then, you know, share your judgment with us on this, whether the board does need to look at policy.
Yeah, we can do that. Thanks, Sheldon.
Yeah?
Thank you.
Appreciate you hanging around.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. We're on to 2017-18 board goal development process.
Yep, so as fate would have it, Tuesday, August 1st, 6 PM. Put it in your planners. That is the day. So that was no mean feat finding that date, but we got there, and it's early enough that I think if we don't get done what we need to get done, we at least have some backup date or dates later in the summer. But I have every confidence that we'll get done what we need to get done. But it's really more, I think, at this point, now that we have a date that everybody can be here for, is talk a little bit about the process. And in fact, we don't have another regular board meeting until that date. So, right, we meet on the 8th, and this is on August 1st.
Right.
So this is our last meeting before. So those of you who've been through this process before have an idea of process that we've used in the past.
I would suggest what we've done in the past to circulate ideas. We've done it two ways. I think we had a Google Doc at one point, and then one point we just sent emails with a list of suggestions that people could consider, and, so we had something to start with.
Just so you guys know, that workshop, we start that way, sort of on email, but then when we're here, frequently we have a big scratch pad, and we're writing things down, and somebody sort of volunteers to be the scribe, usually Deirdre.
Let's bring some yellow Post-its. I would like us to try that.
So, we start formulating these ideas and trying to bring people's ideas into a cohesive kind of a goal, right? So, it's worked really well for the last.
I mean, the sooner, if we can accomplish it that day, the better, because then Joe, the administrators, take those goals to, plan for their year. So the longer the process goes, the less likely those things trickle into the school environment.
I mean, just because of schedule, there have been some years, in my time here, we haven't agreed on board goals until October. I mean, we're already two months into the school, into kids being here, so that's later than I think we ought to.
Yeah.
But if we do it at the beginning of August,
That's
there's no
great.
reason we can't have something in place. But, so I agree, I think starting with a sharing of ideas, knowing that, well, I can't make this statement actually, but with the idea that we have to have a narrow and focused goal or set of goals for reasons that I think should be painfully obvious, we need to focus. And I think somebody suggested a couple of meetings ago that the focus be on long-range planning. So that's what I would hope to see come out of the process. But we have to start with something on paper, I agree. We get in a room and start with a blank slate, we'll be looking at each other for 3 hours, and I don't think we'll get where we need to be.
So Deirdre, do you want to sort of suggest a date by which ideas should be submitted?
Yes, so we're meeting on August 1st, that's,
It's a Tuesday.
It's a Tuesday.
Yes.
Could we ask people to have submitted their ideas by the weekend, or do we want it earlier than that in terms of collation?
The weekend before then?
Yeah.
Like the Friday, maybe?
You two are away till the 26th.
We're going to be gone
so-
till like late on Wednesday, so I can do it on Thursday, Friday.
Well, yeah, what about that, that Friday, the 28th?
Friday, yeah. So suggestions by Friday.
Anytime up till then, people can
Yeah, let's-
send them.
It's going to be
Yeah, I think it makes sense.
I mean, we can start it at any
No, later.
Possible.
Yeah,
but
no
That
later
latest,
than the 28th.
28th be the
Ideas and-
final day.
Yeah.
Don't wait till then if you have them.
No,
Yes.
people should just start writing them, just because we're
But
not
if you don't have them by Friday.
in
don't
America.
send
It doesn't mean you can't be having brainwaves
They don't
all
have-
month.
They don't have to be complete thoughts. I mean, it can be
Yeah.
like a topic.
So that would
We've
be,
done that too.
that would be
like-
Friday, July 28th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do we want to just keep them circulating as one email chain?
Yeah.
Do we want to send
Let's
them
do
all
that.
to, okay.
Let's do it.
good.
So whoever gets to it first starts the chain.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Perfect. Okay. Next, we have board committee reports. I am reporting on the long-range planning committee, which has met twice.
And I didn't get my minutes done for yesterday's meeting, my apologies.
I don't know why.
I'll report
Yesterday.
on 3 or 4 of them by the time we come back.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we are attempting in long-range planning to
you go to
meet
Rhinebeck?
regularly, and this meeting took place on June 28th, so just for your reference, we met yesterday as well. We are really in a kind of preliminary mode right now where we're doing fact-finding, and as I think we mentioned last time we reported, we're meeting with each of the building principals. So the first meeting was with Brett King to talk about Chancellor and what he sees sort of as being challenges that are being presented by declining enrollment. These are the questions we're asking all the principals. What are the challenges presented by declining enrollment? Please explain the current organization of the building so we can understand it, and think about what the future enrollment trends are and what he sees ahead for the next 5 years. And actually, I think since we've already heard from 2 principals, a lot of thought and a lot of conversation's been going on that we haven't been aware of between the building principals about many of these things, which part of this fact-finding has brought to the surface for us. He talked about the fact that when he first came into the district, they had just moved to 4 kindergarten classes, and now we're at 3. So he talked about the numbers, when it's comfortable to create those sections, and when you start to inch up in terms of the numbers, and yet you're still holding to that number, what the challenges are that face the teachers, particularly in those younger grades, K through 2. He, of course, pointed out that every time we do lose a section, we are reducing staff. That's important to realize. Even as overall numbers are trending down, he shared with us his very strong sense that students who are starting school at Chancellor are, we have many students with special needs, we have many students who need accommodations, and in his view, that number proportionally is perhaps growing to some extent. We don't have a lot of hard data on that, and he's going to collect some of that information for us. He again reminded us that the classification is quite rigorous, and that the state actually mandates numerous checkpoints where reclassification is possible, so it is not his sense that this is a phenomenon that is not rooted in very real changes, demographic changes in our population. So we talked a lot about that, and what are the best practices for inclusion in classrooms, and how to think creatively about supporting those students. He talked about the impact of declining enrollments on our specials, right? Arts, gym, music, and ways in which he's already deploying those teachers across the building and across the grades to give more enrichment opportunities during recess, for instance. He sort of outlined something he's been doing this year with giving these additional opportunities to 2 grades a day. He did point out that if those staff members began to go down from full-time to part-time fractions, he recognized and would expect there would be some challenges. So the 2 largest challenges from his perspective are these steady or in fact rising numbers of incoming students with high needs and lower enrollments, which impact our planning for class size. We asked about what possibilities there might be for how we would communicate to the community around the services we offer for special education students, and that was interesting since he basically has a lot of experience with this from his previous posts. We talked about continuing this conversation with more data. He also talked about how he's working with his staff, with his teachers, to anticipate larger enrollments and think creatively. Larger class size, right. Not larger enrollment, larger class size in each individual classroom. And giving the teachers professional development opportunities to really grow into that reality moving forward. We asked some questions about what would happen if we reconfigured the grades that are being taught in Chancellor. We were asking those questions of all the principals. What would a K through 6 building look like? And he had some very interesting, very preliminary, exploratory thoughts to share with us about that. We talked about aides and teaching assistants and the kind of flexibility with which we've been attempting to deploy them. There is no state mandate on having 2 teachers in an integrated classroom, yet guidelines speak to having 2 adults in the room when necessary. So we're really trying to understand what is the SED kind of level of directive and what is kind of integral to the culture of Rhinebeck schools as opposed to the state mandates. Tom is working on an organizational chart for the whole district, so we actually can see where everybody's responsibilities lie. He's continuing to whittle down the list of statistical neighbors so we can really look at the districts that are comparable to Rhinebeck to understand some of the choices they're making and how they're dealing with the challenges that we are being presented with. You know, I think it's important to state, and we talked about this a little bit after we got these minutes together, these are exploratory conversations. We're really trying to understand where current practice is coming from, and we're trying to have very kind of open conversations in an exploratory way about how changing material circumstances both provides an opportunity but clearly also challenges. So that's very important to recognize. Even as we're sort of listening very carefully to the philosophy and past practices that give us the organization we have today, we're also really trying to talk with everyone about what could be possible. What are other ways we can imagine these things being done?
What is the 12 to 1 to 1 model that you refer to?
Oh, hang on, let me find where it
It's
is.
12 students to 1 teacher
Oh, yeah.
to 1 aide.
Okay, thank you.
The self-contained environment. we were
Special
talking about
education.
for
Yeah,
special
sometimes you see an 811 means there's more severe handicaps, so only 8 kids in a class, 1 teacher, 1 aide.
I think we have, is that it? Do we have any more?
I have a report, but I don't have minutes. But the Rhinebeck collaboration met this past week. It's our second meeting thus far this season. I brought up one of the issues that we discussed a little earlier, which is field space and shared field space. The town is looking to, as I understand it, to develop some field space down at the Thompson Mazzarella Park. Questions were raised as in terms of the schedules and whether we could help one another out with use of field space. They'll have a growing season and we'll have growing seasons. It's not really clear to me whether or not their schedule and our schedule will facilitate that, but I think we're keeping an open mind about that. They also raised the issue about whether somehow our project, they might be able to tag onto our project and get some cheaper construction rates if there's some construction company on site right now. And there are probably some informal ways of doing it. For example, if we're using somebody to do work for us and they want to approach that vendor and say, hey, while you're here, after you finish with the school, you want to come down to our place and give us a decent price since you've already mobilized and are on site. I'm not sure there's anything legally that we could do to commingle these projects. They were kind of throwing that out as an idea. I'm not sure that's going to work, and again, if scheduling doesn't work, then it doesn't work. And again, I'm not clear as to where our schedule is, much less where their schedule might be, but we're having those conversations. They're very interested in safe walking to school. We talked a lot about school busing and why do we bus every kid in the village, and the reason is because the village is not very walkable at this stage of the game. And really most of the burden of, in fact, all of the burden of that is going to be on the village. They were talking about crossing guards and could the school district hire crossing guards? Well, the school district is not allowed to hire crossing guards. That's a municipal responsibility, just like striping crosswalks and all that stuff. That's not something we're allowed to do. It was a question about, well, could high school kids volunteer to be crossing guards, for community service? And I said, yeah, probably want to talk with your attorney because there may be some liability issues with under 21-year-olds crossing kids. I said it's complicated, but look into it. I certainly didn't commit our kids, but I said I'd certainly keep an open mind. But I think that there are going to be some liability issues connected with that. What's that?
Time issues.
Well, assuming that, yeah, I'm not even thinking about that, yeah. Certainly. They also were talking about shared services. The town, the village, and the school district have had someone at each of the, I think it's been 3 or 4 shared service meetings with the county. Rhinebeck Schools, just so you're all aware, is participating very robustly. Most other school districts have not been participating since the first meeting, just so you're aware. But yours truly is there, and his truly has been filling out the forms and sending in possibilities for us to share services. I also mentioned to Mayor Bassett and to Supervisor Spinzia, thank you, that I would much prefer to share services and do cooperative buying directly with them than send a truck down to Poughkeepsie to get a load of salt or whatever. I mean, we've signed up for those with our interest in those kinds of things, but I think it would make most sense to cooperate locally. So we'll see where it goes. But good discussions. We're meeting again. I think it's the second week in September, and it seems like I always walk out of those meetings tasked with information gathering to bring back to them, but that's okay. I'll be talking with our construction and design professionals and with Steve Boucher about field use and scheduling and whatnot, and we'll throw it out there. And if there are any ways we can cooperate, we will. We're certainly interested in cooperating, and if there's anything that comes out of the countywide plan, we've given them a whole list of things. So if there are any things that work out that can save us money and that are feasible for us, we'll jump on that too. So just so you know, that's where that bigger picture is. But I like the idea of working with our local officials. It just makes a lot more. And we already do some of that. We buy salt from them locally. We are part of their fuel card service. So we're paying the same municipal rate that the town and the village are, no taxes, and whatever the rate is off the barge when it pulls up, that's what we're paying. We're paying the same thing. So again, we don't have a huge fleet, so it's not huge savings, but it is savings, and we'll continue to do that. It's very convenient for us too. So we'll continue to look for those ways of sharing stuff. We had the municipal agreement with the town, where we use one another's, Supervisor Spinzia was making sure that I knew about all the money that they were putting into the tennis courts, because the tennis courts are really, it's really the school. And I said, well, I'm guessing people other than the school teams probably use those tennis courts, but we do appreciate your allowing us to use those as our home courts. And I said, similarly, we are maintaining our gyms and such for the adult ed program. So it's kind of working all around. Less so for the village, because they don't have much in terms of recreational facilities. It's not their fault. They just don't. So anyway, that's the latest on the Rhinebeck collaboration.
Somebody had another.
Yeah, I just had a quick question.
Sure.
Along the lines of shared services, had they come up with any ideas about how they'd want to share things that we could provide? Anything else?
They being,
They.
are you talking about the
town
county
and village.
level or the
No,
local level?
Town and village. When you suggested that if we could
Yeah, I mean,
create a
I-
pot of sharing.
I mean, I've mentioned a couple of things to them, like, one of the things that came up at the county meeting that I mentioned to them was, I said, well, you know, every year, we do sexual harassment training, we do bloodborne pathogens. I didn't sense that there was much of an interest there. Like, we already do that, so, but that's okay. I mean, maybe something will change, but there's a conversation about it, and I think that's really the main thing. I'm not, other than use of recreational facilities, we haven't really come up with things that we could sell them, or, and I wouldn't even sell them that training.
Yeah.
You know, you have people need to be trained in sexual harassment, send them over to our auditorium when we're training the rest of our staff. I wouldn't be sending them a bill. I'm trying to get away from this idea of billing one another, because that's what we were doing back in the day before we signed that intermunicipal agreement and said, you know what, this is dumb. We're sending each other bills back and forth. Let's just agree, you can use our stuff, we'll use your stuff, and let's call it even. Whether it's even or not, but it's the way to do it. So that's how we've been doing it. Anyway, that's where we're at right now. Good conversation, so we'll continue conversing. And that's all I have on that one.
Okay. Well, I think we're ready to move to the comments section of the agenda. Good news.
I would just like to mention, I put in your mailbox, in your packets, Nancy Abel has been named by the New York State English Council as a 2017 Educator of Excellence. So it was passed along to me, and I wanted to pass it along to you, just so you're aware.
So it's always wonderful to hear about,
Yeah, it's great.
teachers in our district being recognized.
Mhm.
That's wonderful. Other good news? Okay. Old business. Diane?
Nancy Abel or Nancy Erlanger?
I made the same mistake. It's Nancy
I thought it was Abel. I thought it was
says
Nancy
it is
Abel.
Abel.
This top of the memo says Erlanger.
Well, as the kids say, my bad. No, it was Nancy, because the memo says Abel, right?
Well,
Nancy
just the original memo is Nancy Abel and DK.
Nancy Erlanger sent me an email saying, I'm so proud of Nancy Abel.
Yeah, okay.
Nancy Abel is the one who was recognized by the New York State Council of English Teachers or English Educators.
Which is a great honor.
Easy mistake. Easy mistake.
It's because our English teachers are so good that we would be
It could have been
confused.
either of them.
Okay, old business.
I don't have any.
No old business. There is no public here, so we will
There is
move
none.
past public comment. Other.
So as some of you around the table know, Deirdre and I are involved with the Rhinebeck exchange program. We're actually leaving for Germany tomorrow with the program for 2 weeks. But we had our Off to Germany concert here at this auditorium last night, so I'd like to just express a public thank you to the school district for use of the facilities for the past 6 months for rehearsals and our concert. And we look forward to using, hopefully, the construction process all works out next summer, that we can use it for a little while next year when the Germans are here.
Right, when the Germans are here. Big challenge for all of us.
That might be a bit of a challenge.
We're bugging people's ear for now. but-
Well, we're not doing any work
touching
in the
that area.
auditorium,
Yeah,
so
we're not
I
touching that
think we'd
area.
probably be okay
All
down there.
right, yeah.
I
Well,
may have to come in the back door or whatever, but.
it's exciting.
Yeah, oh, yeah, I think it could work out.
I think it deserves to be said that Culture Connect is off in Madagascar right now with our former
Yeah.
colleague Deirdre Burns, and for a school of our size to support so many different initiatives in terms of global education and experience, or not to support it, but to at least befriend and give space to and moral support at the very least to these endeavors is really quite special. Okay, well, all right, safe travel. Thank you. Thank you. Unless there's anything else anyone wants to say, maybe we should move on to our action items. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the following consent items?
I don't think so.
I just leave
It's the whole idea of having consent
Just leave it that way.
I would, if I
Yes.
could, I would ask the board to consider tabling 6.1.1. We still have not received that policy from our friends at the State Education Department. The first year in my memory, we have not had it way early. The rest of those items can be approved. That will have to be approved at the August date. Hopefully we'll have it by August 8th.
So, move to approve the consent agenda except for 6.1.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Motion passes. I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve as a final reading the modification to board policy number 5300, district code of conduct.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Those unanimous? We have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve additional summer 2017 curriculum program and particle.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
I'd like to move to table this until after executive session.
There's been a motion to table. May I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor of tabling motion 6.3? It's unanimous. That motion is tabled. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to appoint mentors for the 2017-18 school year?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? Unanimous. The motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the selection of the following textbooks: journalistic writing, building the skills, honing the craft, Knight, Marion Street Press 2010 for the journalism course, and it was the best of sentences, it was the worst of sentences, Casa Grande, 10-Speed Press 2010 for English 12.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve non-unit salaries for 2017-18?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? It's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the 2017-18 hourly step system rate for food service helpers?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? It's unanimous, that motion passes. We have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the reappointment of part-time instructional and non-instructional personnel for the 2017-18 school year, effective September 1st, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? It's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the list of additional emergency conditional substitute teachers and substitute non-instructional staff for the 2017-18 school year?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? It's unanimous, that motion passes. We have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the following resolution. Be it resolved that Board of Education hereby authorizes the board president and the superintendent of schools to execute 2016-17 implementation certification form for the annual professional performance review for classroom teachers and building principals pursuant to Education Law Section 3012D and Part 30-3 of the Rules of the Board of Regents.
So moved.
Second.
Is it meant to be?
Should it be
those dates?
2017-18?
No, it's for the past year.
Oh, it's for the past year, okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion to approve the 2016-17 superintendent's annual performance evaluation?
Should get a motion in a second, then somebody probably want to table it.
Oh, did you motion? Sorry.
Yeah.
Second.
Yes.
I move to table this.
May I have a second to that? Second. All those in favor of tabling? Okay, that motion is tabled. Okay. May I have a motion to move into executive session for the purpose of the discussion of employment and personnel matters?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, that motion passes. We are moving into executive session.